Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Puppet Time Online, your chance to sit down with some of the puppetry community's finest and me, and to learn about what they know about. I'm your host, Eric Wright, brought to you by the Puppet Kitchen. I'm so excited for you all to be here. I'm excited to be here. As usual, we have Katie over here running the show.
Hi, everyone.
She's also excited to be here.
So excited. Mostly.
I am really excited to have our guest on today. We are live on YouTube, and Facebook Live, and on Twitch. And we want to hear from you. If you have any questions or anything that you want to ask our guest or me during the show, put them in the chat down below, or over here, or maybe it's over here, wherever it is on your device that you're watching on. Right, Katie?
Yes.
Katie will be watching. She's going to be monitoring all your comments and questions and responding and making sure that we see them so that we can hear from you all. We want to hear from you. I'm really excited about our guest today. She is a real leader in the puppetry community, and she's an incredible puppeteer, director. She is the artistic director of the O'Neill Puppetry Conference, as well as playing the character of Grundgetta on Sesame Street. Please welcome to the show, Pam Arciero. Hi, Pam.
Hi, how are you, Eric?
I'm very well. It's really nice to have you here.
Thank you. Lovely to see you all. Hi, Katie.
Well, you have just so many. Before the show, we were talking about you just do so many incredible things, and are such a great leader of the puppetry community. It's really exciting, and I want to talk about all of those things that you do. But as usual, we always start with asking our guests how they got started in puppetry. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. I was studying dance at the University of Hawaii. I got my undergraduate degree in dance, but I had suffered a knee injury, so I had a hip to ankle cast. And so I started in my choreography class, I started doing dances for one leg because I couldn't move the other leg. And one of the other choreographers said, "You're really funny. I'm doing this puppet thing. Do you want to come along?" And so then I went, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Puppets, huh?" And so I went to see what she was doing, and she had a touring company, and I helped her out a little bit. And then Kermit Love, who was the builder of Big Bird and the Snuffleupagus, designer of Snuffleupagus, and several other characters on Sesame Street, was coming to teach a puppetry course for the summer.
That's cool.
And I said, "Wow, that sounds great. Okay, I'll take that." And I took the puppetry course, and Kermit loved puppetry, and he loved art, and he loved the making of puppets and the performance of puppets. And he could instill that into you. As I sat there, I was like, "Oh my God, I found my thing. I found my thing. I found my thing." And so I graduated with my degree in dance, and then I went to the University of Connecticut and got my degree in puppetry, master's degree in puppetry from UConn, and met lots and lots of puppet people. But you know, that bell goes off in your head when you find what you're supposed to be doing, and that's how it was for me, because I love to sing, I love to dance, I love acting, and I like plastic arts. I like making stuff. And so suddenly here was this art form that let me do all of those things, you know, and it was really great. I was just delighted. And so I went to UConn and got my degree there, and that's where it all went.
That's really amazing.
Went on from there.
What were some of the first kinds of jobs that you had right out of school, right out of UConn?
Well, right out of UConn, actually my very first job was building costumes for Hansel and Gretel for the Hartford Ballet Company.
Nice.
And I was making these big, giant, odd costumes, giant dancing candy balls, and a witch costume she had a 20-foot wingspan that I built out of rattan and drapey fabric and stuff. And I sort of made a rule for myself. I didn't want to take a job that was outside of puppetry if I possibly could. So at least this was related to puppetry. And then I auditioned for the Muppets, and I met Marty Robinson about that same time. We auditioned together. He got Snuffy. I got nothing. He, but we improv together really great. And so both of us looked good, and they said, "Oh, we'll call you back. Don't worry. We're just not looking for women right now." Now, they had no women working at that time, you know, in the crew, but they weren't looking for any.
Right.
So, so I didn't get that job, but he said, "I'm building this show. Do you want to come help me build it?" So I went and helped him cut out some leaves for Little Shop of Horrors the first time it ran, and helped him do some of the grunt work with it. And I was still in college, so I didn't audition or go into the show or anything until later. Because after that, when I did graduate, when I was completely graduated, I went into the second crew of Little Shop of Horrors.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did about
That's cool.
2 months on it. And then I got The Great Space Coaster. I auditioned for that. And I got puppetry and television work, which was really my focus.
Sure.
So I did the short stint during the day, during Space Coaster, nighttime during Little Shop, and I suddenly realized I was dying. I thought, oh, I'm not going to make this. So I quit Little Shop and went strictly into finishing the season of Space Coaster, which was lots of fun. And that was with Kevin Clash and Jim Martin.
That.
Yes, there we are.
Babies.
Yeah. That was probably 1982 or 3. I'm not sure which year that was.
That's amazing.
But it's me and Kevin. We're doing the Huggles in a box. So I did that, and then auditions came up again for Muppets, for Sesame Street specifically. And we started with something like 300 people in that first audition. And once a week, Jane Henson was training us, you know, because in those days, nobody had cameras. It was, you know, it's 1983. Nobody had video cameras. If you did, they were these giant, honking, horrible things that were very hard to work and very, very expensive, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for just the camera itself, the home camera, you know. So, so they would train us. They would set up a camera every week, and every week we'd come in and they'd do different things. Richard Hunt trained us. Jerry came in and talked to us about voices, all of that stuff during this period of time. And every week there were less people, and it was excruciating because, you know, we also did not have cell phones. Right. So you had to wait by the phone, and I think the workshops were on Thursday, and the call back to come for the next workshop was Monday. So you had to wait the whole weekend, and there's no email. You know? So you're just sitting by the phone waiting for that call, and then they didn't tell you weren't invited. They would only tell you were invited. So if on Tuesday morning you hadn't gotten a call, you weren't coming back. Yeah. So every Monday, I remember sitting by the phone waiting for that call, and it would come, and it would come, and it would come, and we got down to 2 people at the end after 4 months, and it was Camille Bernera and myself, and they were looking for Grundgetta because Brian Meal had decided to leave the company at that time. He didn't want to do puppets anymore. And so he wanted to go and be a writer, which was great. And he's a great writer. I mean, he's a wonderful writer. I'm very grateful. But so he left, and Kevin Clash and myself were hired to cover, and Marty took over Telly from him. So 3 of us were hired to take over the characters that Brian was doing because he was incredible. Yeah. You know, he had this whole array of characters. And so I got Grundgetta because I knew the character better. Camille's a fabulous puppeteer, and had she known Grundgetta any better, I would not be sitting here. It would be Camille. But she's really a great, funny lady, and wonderful puppeteer at the time. She retired from puppetry fairly early. But it was pretty amazing. I remember that last day going to the audition, and I'm walking down the street, and my hair is bad, and I'm really nervous, and I'm just shook out of my mind thinking I'm never going to get this job. I can't believe I'm here. You know, that whole thing as you're walking down the Upper East Side to the Henson mansion at the time. Yeah. And this homeless guy looks up at me and says, "Hey, Miss Piggy, you lose your hairbrush?" And I just went, the universe knows, the whole universe knows that I am not qualified to do this. You know, so I swallowed
New York for you.
Yeah, I know. I said, well, okay. So I went and swallowed my insecurities, went in and auditioned the best I could. And I
Sure.
left the room and they just said, nice. Okay, good. And then as I was leaving the room, this is how they tell you, they're very cash, right? I go, okay, is there a workshop next week or anything? And she goes, no, why don't you just come in September and try the character out for us, which was the start of the season. I went, oh, okay. And it was Dulcie Singer. In that room was Jane Henson, Jim Henson, John Stone, Dulcie Singer, and Lisa Simon. So it was all the heavyweights of the Sesame Street at that time. And it was like
Gosh,
a little intimidating, but
that's wild.
then I was there. You know,
I mean, oh yeah, and there you are. Oh
there
my
I
God.
am. Yeah.
I mean, you know, maybe
my
running
girl.
into that homeless guy got you the grouchiness you needed.
Yes, probably. It made me realize that, probably doesn't matter. He's, he
It's
could pick up on it.
Didn't Carol tell a story? Carol Spinney tell a story about matching the voice of Oscar off of some cabbie that he had in New
Yes,
York?
yeah, cranky cabbie.
Yeah, it's like, there's that New York DNA runs deep in that.
Yes,
show.
right, it does. Well, it is, it's a stoop in New York City. There's no getting away from that. That's what Sesame Street is. We are New York based.
Yeah.
And
What do
this
you
works.
know about the origin of Grundgetta? I feel like she was one of a couple of characters that was added to like the main crew of puppets in the like earlier days of Sesame Street.
Yeah, Brian started doing her. He had only done her for one season and before he quit.
Uh-huh.
But they were trying to balance out more female characters because it was a heavily male show.
Sure.
Big Bird was somewhat androgynous. Some girls identified Big Bird as female, but generally speaking, he was pretty male. And everybody, Ernie and Bird and Oscar and Cookie and all of those guys, all male.
Sure.
You had Prairie Dawn, but Fran didn't really work the show in those days. She'd just come in for a week or so and do her inserts and then leave. So there was no consistent female character. So they were looking to put more female characters in. And so then Grundgetta was a great object for Brian to do, because not only was it this really cranky female voice that he did great, but it was sort of not a nicey, sweetie little girl like Prairie Dawn.
Right.
Not that Prairie Dawn is really that, but that was the image. She's not a little pink chewing gum puppet. She's this big, hairy, grouchy, disgusting thing. And women can be anything. I mean, that's the whole point for me.
Yeah. That's so cool. How do you see her addition? Like, are there similarities or differences to the new characters that Sesame's adding all the time? So I feel like that's kind of a thing that is a part of Sesame Street, is making sure that like representation is a part of Sesame Street. Right.
Yes, that's been a really big part of Sesame Street. As you know, or probably have heard, they've added Elmo's father. They've added families. Rosita's father is disabled from the military. So we've tried to cover the other groups as best we can. And as you probably heard, they have now also introduced puppets of color with actual brown fleece. Some of us are having mixed feelings about that. I do. I mean, I think the representation is good, but I always sort of felt like our puppets were puppets of color. We're all colors. That an orange puppet could be a black person or a white person. So given that it's vague, that it fit more to my world thinking. But I really appreciate having the specific identification as a different thing. And so we're all kind of trying to figure out how that works. But Sesame is very good about trying to stay on top of that. Yeah, always has been. Yeah.
It's interesting because Grundgetta seems like she's there to represent, like you said, like a different kind of feminine energy, right?
Right.
And really the big step was like hiring a woman to do a female role, which I think is super, super important.
Right.
And it seems different than like, creating characters that are geared towards maybe more specific demographics, but maybe not, Well,
I mean, and they do both, right? They do both. We have our crew of regulars. There are now 5 women who are regular on the show, and there are 8 men, maybe 9 men. It's 14 total that are sort of our regular crew. And that's huge because for many years I was the only woman on the set, day in, day out, day in, day out. I was just the one there. And I didn't always do female characters. I mean, I did a lot of assisting, a lot of background boys and frogs and dogs and,
Sure.
female frogs, of course, but it was an interesting time watching them trying to do that. And still, it took a very long time for us to get that balance happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until they did create someone like Rosita,
Mm-hmm.
which was very specific Latina and
Mm-hmm.
and female. And then they hired Carmen in, who was Mexican, and
Right.
they started to add. They became aware that they couldn't have someone pretending to be
Right.
Latinx, right?
Right.
And so the same is true, with Julia, our autism puppet. They made sure that Stacey Gordon, who plays Julia, had a very strong connection. Her son is autistic, and that
Right.
gives her the feeling for what an autistic child goes through and what it is.
Mm-hmm. Sort of authentic representation.
Authentic representation as much as possible,
Sure.
So the brown puppets that we're doing now are done by African Americans for the most part, and we have we're hiring a complement of African American performers to come in, and because it's hard, what we do is hard. You don't walk in off the street and learn to do what we do. It takes years and years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're helping them along as best we can to fit into the roles and keep going forward.
Yeah, I've also noticed that Sesame Workshop does even more these days, workshops where you can go that are specifically geared towards BIPOC puppeteers to like get them trained up. And, like you said, when you were starting out, the cameras weren't easy to come by.
Right.
But the training is still something that isn't easy to come by, even though
Right.
there's tons of cameras around everywhere.
Right.
Like getting that level of puppetry, training under your belt is really something that takes, extra effort.
And it also takes years.
Yeah.
And also it takes 3 cameras we work on, right?
Right.
Nobody has 3 cameras at home and a switcher. And if they do, they're running their own professional studio at this point.
Right.
Because that camera switch, making sure that you're still looking down in the right direction and looking into the camera the way you need to be. That's a challenge. And you only learn that on the job.
Yeah.
And it's a little spooky a lot of the time.
Yeah, it is.
Very.
It is. And I mean, I have, only a little bit of experience with that, but it can really throw you. And it is a completely different level of, what you're, because you usually get used to being puppeteering on camera by seeing yourself.
Right.
And it's a level where you kind of have to be ready without seeing yourself, like before
Right.
the switches to you.
Yeah. And, we have ways around it and we can figure it out and you can take a stop. But it's like, when I start teaching this style, I say you have to be able to lip sync without thinking about it, because that's like breathing. It's like us talking. You have to be able to do that, because only then, after you're so comfortable with lip syncing that you don't think about it, that you can look into the camera directly and make sure your puppet's focus is where it needs to be, or over to the side, or wherever it needs to be, or that camera cut is coming, so you make the change as the camera's cutting. You can almost be there, right? So that is the second level, and that's just the second level, and there are many, many, many more. I think one of the things that Ryan Dillon has brought to the show is this incredible level of proficiency with that kind of stuff. He's just brilliant. He's upped it so much. It's unbelievable what he does.
He does he's amazing.
He's amazing. He's amazing. I've been watching this show. I've been on this show for 38 years. And the good thing about being a puppeteer, and probably everyone who are puppeteers mostly, I'm assuming that's who's watching.
Yeah.
They know that you always learn, that you're never done. You're never done learning to be a puppeteer. You will continue to learn that until you stop puppeteering. It's just the way it is. It's so complicated and so interesting. And that's what keeps it interesting to me, is that I'm always learning something new. I'm always seeing something different. And how can I do that better? And where's that going to go? And how does that fit into the next thing I'm doing? And watching Ryan has just been like a whole new education,
That's incredible.
Jerry Nelson, watching Jerry was all about how characters form and how deep connected Jerry had to characters. He could come up with a character that was so believable in a minute. And it was 100% real, and the rest of us maybe are just doing stupid puppet voices. And there's Jerry. There's Jerry.
It's a real depth of character with him, yeah.
Yes, right. This is a real, and you ask him a question, he knows everything about him. what they read in the newspaper this morning, or if they read the newspaper. You mean that kind of stuff. It was that depth instantly in his head.
Yeah.
He just knew these characters. It was just amazing.
That's
You
really
know.
cool.
And each of us have our different little skill sets. I'm not
Sure.
sure what mine is yet, but
Well, speaking of all the different things that you need to know as a puppeteer, I'm really interested in, and on this show we get into this a lot too, I'm really interested in all the different things that you do outside of your creative roles. I mean, you are an incredible performer and director, but you also are the secretary on the board at the Henson Foundation, and the artistic director at the O'Neill Puppetry Conference. Like, you have a lot of different hats that are leadership roles and administrative roles.
yeah.
And I'm really interested to know what influence puppetry specifically has on your ability to do these other kind of, roles that people wouldn't necessarily associate
Right.
with creativity.
There's two things. One of them is puppeteer forces you to multitask, right? Because you're looking at a script, you're looking at a camera, you're looking at what the puppet is doing and how it's looking at the camera. And you're helping the director as you go form that picture constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the skill set you have. You're already multitasking all the time. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that puppetry opens up is that ability to multitask and to see a bigger picture. To me, that's what it's all about. It's the bigger picture. And that relates in that, for me, the legacy, the thing that my payback for the wonderful life I've had. And I've had a wonderful, wonderful, fun career. I can't even tell you how much laughing is important in our career. It's what we do.
Yeah.
We make each other laugh. That's the
Yeah.
goal, right?
Yeah.
I know I can make an audience laugh some of the time, but if I can make the cameraman and the other puppeteers laugh, I've done my job.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the cameramen are really hard.
Yeah. They've seen it all.
They've seen it all. They don't
have to-
care.
they have
They
to
just,
see it all.
Frank Biondo. That was average. It's just how it is. But it is a legacy thing for me, a pay it forward in a way.
Uh-huh.
So I sort of fell into these different things. With the O'Neill, I was helping to just guide some puppet programs in the early days. I was the director of the Emerging Artist Projects, or the Continuum. They were called Continuum projects in those days, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Richard was running the conference, and then he realized he was becoming a photographer. Speaking of switching how many hats we wear, Richard Termini was moving more into photography than doing puppetry full time. So the discussion came up, and they asked me if I would like to be the artistic director, and I was like, "Wait, that's a lot of work. I don't know." Well, okay.
Right. Which I feel like is also a characteristic of a puppeteer. Being
Right.
Like, that seems like a lot of work, and I don't know, but okay.
Right. I don't have any time, but okay, I'll try.
Exactly.
But I found that once I fell into that position, I could see different places to go. Like I added the pre-conference thing. That became my baby, was to give us intensives, right? Where you could learn to make mechanisms from Jim Krupa.
Right.
What a gift that is. You could study marionettes with Jim Rose and Fred Thompson and Philip Huber and the myriad of, Alice Gottschalk has come in from Germany to do it too. You could study that intensely, spend 3 to 4 full days just working on that. Whereas the conference itself has a lot of other components. You're working on more than one thing, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So that became my thing, kind of, was expanding the conference into 2 weeks, and then also expanding it to many more international. I'm very interested in international puppetry because they're doing way different stuff than we do all over the world.
Yeah.
We tend, in this country, people say puppets to the general public, and it's always Muppets. That's all they think of, that style. And there's so many other styles, as you know. I see them all behind your head there. There's so many other styles of puppetry that's just so exciting and different and expressive in a way that humans and cartoons are not.
Yeah.
And the freedom in that, right?
Yeah.
So
that pre-conference program, did that come out of your experience? Like, did that come out of something that you were seeing as like a need in your experience of the conference?
Well, yeah, because it seemed like people really, and it actually probably started because of Jim Krupa. I wanted
Mhm.
Jim Krupa to come up and do something, and he couldn't take a week.
Uh-huh. Right.
So he only had 3 days.
Yeah.
And then I began to think about it and thought, well, in 3 days I can get 40 hours, and in 40 hours you should be able to build a mech.
Yeah.
And so we discussed it, and it came out of that need and out of the fact that I like that at the conference itself, the main conference, you do get a variety of experiences. You aren't just getting one thing. You're getting, you're getting to see other performances. You're getting to take master classes in between. You're in the evening, you're creating your own pieces if you want, so you're working on a whole lot of different projects rather than just the one, even though you are there to study with one artist, say, and study that style. And you have the choice to do that, or you have the choice to expand, which was important to me. But then there are certain artists who just need that concentrated time to develop. And actually working with Alice is the same thing. She does incredible materials and movement she does a compact course in that. And it's really about experimenting with materials, which became very interesting to me after watching Jim. Jim is very concrete, and this is Delcron, this is how this goes. You use this set screw and this, and then Alice is about, well, pick up this piece of fabric. How does it move? Drop the feather from all the way up. How does it fall? How can you incorporate? So she was sort of the opposite side of that, but she needed the same amount of time to work there. So then we began rolling other people, and the writers had, the writing is very good in that short period of time because the pressure is on, you got to do it. And I really like writing being in the pre-conference. Right now, because we're virtual again this year, we don't have a pre-conference. We just have the 5 days, but we do have writing once again, and that's sort of an definite O'Neill standard. I mean, it was started as a playwrights conference during the summers. It was started for playwrights to come up, so we like having that writing strand involved.
Yeah, it's pretty great, especially just as a way to connect to the O'Neill Center as a whole. Because that center is not just the puppetry program for the puppeteers watching it. There's so many incredible programs that happen at that center. And I feel like I was at the O'Neill probably 2000 to 2003, something like that.
A while ago, yeah.
And I feel like the emphasis on writing wasn't there in the same way that it is now.
No.
And it's been in a really great addition because, I think that in the same way that people often forget about the acting component and like just acting, like straight up acting chops that are needed in puppetry, like if you're going to create a new piece, like knowing how to write down your thoughts and communicate through writing is a really important skill to have. So I really love that that's become a big part of the conference. Yeah,
I mean, Robert Smythe, who taught for us for many years, had a statement that you need 3 things for a good puppet show. You need 3 things for a good piece of music. You need 3 things for a good ballet. For a good ballet, you need a good dancer, you need a good choreographer, and you need a good score, right? And same with the musician. You need a good violin, you need a good violin player, and you need a good score. And it's same with the puppet. You need a good puppet, you need a good puppeteer, and you need a good story.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those 3 things, nobody's going to like it. Anytime someone tells me they don't like puppetry or they don't like puppet shows, I always tell them that's because you've only seen bad puppet shows.
Katie says the same thing about musicals. She went to conservatory for musical theater.
Wow.
And it's the same way. I mean, it's like when most people think about musical theater, they're thinking about bad musical theater.
Exactly.
And I think that might actually be true of most art forms.
That's probably
when people
true.
say they don't like modern art, like they're thinking of bad modern art.
Right. Or the one thing they saw. That means you've seen one thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I like that the conference is really great at sort of expanding like all of the things, encouraging everybody to be part of all of the things you need to be a good puppeteer, and experimenting. I think that's the other thing that's really great about the conference is really there's always been a focus on a discussion of what puppetry is and can be.
Mhm.
Which, you know, I was in Marty's Puppet Anarchy strand way back in the day, and I think he's doing a similar thing this year with Tim. Is that
right? That's sock puppets gone wild.
That's right.
Enough said.
Yeah, exactly. That seems like we've had Tim on the show, and we're gonna have Marty on the show next week, and I think
get him to tell you about that. Yeah, it's pretty. Well, he builds amazing sock puppets. That's why he's gonna teach them how to build this amazing sock puppets. So
that's really cool. I mean, speaking of misunderstood puppets,
yes,
you know,
yeah.
Do you feel like now you were, if I'm not mistaken, you were one of the guest artists for the very first O'Neill Puppetry Conference. Is that right?
Yes, right. It was Marty, myself, and Kathy Mullen.
What was the feeling, or what was the atmosphere around the creation of the conference for the very first conference, very first time?
Well, the first time, I mean, we really weren't sure it was going to continue. And it was, yeah, there we are.
There you are.
Oh God, I
That's
still
amazing.
have that shirt.
Marty still has that hair. What do you know?
Yes, yeah, we're still doing it. I think Kathy still has those shoes. Well, it was started. Jim had died the year before, and they weren't very open about teaching the Muppet style. There was sort of a rule that we did not teach anyone what we do, and it was specific to us. It wasn't a hard rule, but it was kind of understood.
Mm-hmm.
So Jane decided to start the conference in honor of Jim, and there were other people involved starting it. There was George Flatshaw and Richard Termini and Bart Rockerburton and Bobby Nitzgorski. They were all the founding starters. And there had been a conference before that, which was called The Future of Puppetry, or Futurism and Puppetry. And so Nancy Staub was involved, Allie Lou Curtin, a lot of the really old guard that you would know. They were all talking about, where is puppetry going? And is it going to only be Muppets in the future? You know, people were worried about that no one would ever see marionettes again.
Right.
So they did that. And then Jane said, well, let's do one. We'll do the first one with you guys. We'll do this one, and you guys will teach this style. Richard Termini and Jan Stafura and Peter McKinnon were teaching building. So they were teaching building in the morning, and then we were teaching manipulation in the afternoon and evenings. And very interestingly, of that group, I should have sent a picture of that group. The people who are in it are now very well-known puppeteers. They're Peter Lintz, Tim Lagasse, Heather Ash was in that first group, Mark Gale, a lot of people. Brad Brewer of the Crotations was in it. Paul Vincent Davis, who was from Puppet Showplace all those years ago. Sure. It was a really fascinating group of people who came to learn this style. And the energy was just like, we're so happy to be together, right? And that's always what happens at the O'Neill. We're just so happy to be with other puppeteers who get what we're talking about. We have a shorthand automatically, you know, when we walk in. So that was very exciting. And Jane was really happy to be doing this. And Jane has always been a great supporter of the O'Neill all the way through this, up until the time she passed away. And she even did a show. I don't know if people know that she did her own, directed her own piece there at the O'Neill, which, that's cool. You know, yeah, it was pretty really cool. Yeah, before she passed away. So, wow.
And what about I'm also curious about right after the very first conference, you know, how did it turn from a one-time thing into, yeah, this seems like a really good idea that we should really do this every year. And also, what was the conversation about stuff that should change after that first conference? Right.
I actually wasn't in on that because I was a guest artist, not part of the staff. Yeah. But it was, I believe George White was running the O'Neill at the time, who was the founder of the O'Neill. And he realized that he already had the playwrights conference, and then he was looking at the musical, putting something together like a musical theater conference, which came second. And then having the puppetry conference, he realized he could have multiple conferences and make use of the space. It was partially, you know, a practical theater thinker, right? I have this theater. I have, you know, these theaters. I have this space. What should I do with it? So NTI, which runs the rest of the year, National Theater Institute at the O'Neill, is run on sort of a university style. It is considered a semester away. You go to your regular college, you go there for an intensive theater semester. So they already kind of had that in play and working. And so they were really trying to figure out what to do with these summers. And I think that was part of it. They liked what happened at the puppetry conference. We were very small. You know, we were probably 30 people at the time. And we went through various changes after that. But I think George Latshaw was the first artistic director, and then Richard took over the next year and sort of did all the footwork to figure out how to make it happen. That was really Richard, a lot of Richard and Bart and Bobby trying to put all that stuff together.
That's cool.
And then I would go every year for those first 2 or 3 years. I would just go and see the shows. I had small children at the time. In fact, when I was doing that first conference, I was actually nursing my year-old son through the first conference. So as my children were growing, it was hard to take that week off. But I would come to, you know, the first 3 or 4 or 5 years, I would come to every show, or I would show up and do a master class or a few things. And then once my kids were a little more independent, it was easy for me to go ahead and stay the week, or, you know, have them come and go in that process. And one of the things the O'Neill we've always done is welcomed families. If you want to bring your family, especially as an artist, not so much as a participant, because there just isn't the room.
Right.
But we're not opposed to you bringing your family along if you want them available to you, you know, especially if you have small children. Alice has brought her kids a bunch of times. And the O'Neill, as you know, is a great place for kids. There's a beach right down the road, and there's, you know, play lines and stuff. So,
and, you know, puppets all over the place. Like,
oh, that. And you know what? If you have kids and you're a puppeteer, they do not care about puppets.
That's true.
They're going, yeah, Big Bird.
Yeah,
big deal.
Big.
I've seen Big Bird all the time. Who cares? You know.
In my house, we just call it Bird. You know,
just,
not so big. What kind of things are you? I was telling Jean Marie, I think it's just incredible, the speed and the sort of the way that you transferred the O'Neill, which is so much about being together in the same space. The way you transfer that to being an online experience, I think, has been really, really remarkable. First of all, do you think that you'll keep some kind of online component even after we're able to go back together?
Yeah, I really believe in 2022 will be on campus. And I could have been on campus this year, but it would have only been between 30 and 40 people, including the staff. And so that was a really different feel. Sure. But the component I would keep is going to be the master classes online, because so many people were able to see it all over the world. Yeah. You know, lots of people, I have friends in Italy who were saying, this is great, you know, and in really France cool. And all over the world, people were able to connect. And what we've improved this year is that if you buy a ticket, you can watch it for the next month. You don't have to be there right as it's being produced, because that's what we did last year. You had to be there. And if you missed it, you missed it, because the recordings did not work out well enough to be able to share them in the future, but we have that part taken care of. So you will get the original play and then a month of being able to watch it anytime you want. So
if people can sign up for that, you can get tickets to this year's masterclasses.
Right, yeah, right up until the last minute, yeah.
That's great.
So that we will keep and carry forward. Thank you, great, Katie. We will keep that aspect of it and run it forward, because actually that was always a heartbreak to me, because I would have the artists who are teaching, you know, Ronnie Burkett, who's amazing. They would give this talk to the group, to the whole group of us, 100 or so of us that are at the conference, but nobody else would ever hear these amazing thoughts about puppetry from these people who are creating art at that moment in the process that they're going through. And so that's very exciting to me, to be able to play that forward. You know, and next year we may do it more like we have, which is our guest artists will be the ones who are going to give the master classes. Mm-hmm. I didn't do it so much this year because they're online so much that I didn't want to force them to do another online thing, right? It becomes like, oh my God, my brain. So So I'm asking people from outside the community, but I probably will do that again as well. It'll be half and half, this year, just to put a plug for that right now, Ping Chong is going to be speaking about his life in theater and puppetry. He's one of the original founders of the Halloween Parade in New York City, and a wonderful, wonderful theater artist. Francois Delacrozière is coming, and I think he's going to speak in French. I'm hoping that a good translator comes up. But he's the guy who does those giant walking marionettes, right? La Machine is his company. So those marionettes that are 3 stories high, the elephant or the little girl who walks down the streets of France, you go, how do you do that? How?
Yeah, phenomenal.
They're phenomenal. So he's going to be speaking for us.
So cool.
Kathy Mullen is coming back and starting us off. She's the first one on Monday who's going to be talking about whatever she wants to talk about. I mean, honestly, I let them talk about what they want. And Mervyn Miller, who was a guest artist previously and the director of Warhorse here in this country from England, he will be speaking to us. And then Chin Yun Chong, Joe Chen, some of you might remember her. She went to UConn. She started the Litsei Puppet Colony in Taiwan. And it's an amazing place where she took some rice barns and turned them into theaters and eventually got a dormitory and a museum and a cafeteria. And she has guest artists come from all over the world, create shows. And when you go there, you have your meals are cooked for you, your housing is taken care of, and you just go and create art. And they've had a phenomenal number of people go and work there. I was teaching at the Taiwan University of the Arts. And so when we were there, we went out to Litsei, which is about an hour outside Taipei, I want to say. And we got to see all of it. And it was just beautiful. Her little museum is so cute. I mean, and the other interesting thing, in Taiwan, there are a ton of puppet museums. There were like 8 of them. I was like, what? Wait, huh? What? So anyway, Spain has a billion puppet museums too, but that's a whole nother story.
Sure.
It's like, hey, my grandpa has some puppets. Let's open a museum.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's another Spanish puppet museum. Okay.
That's amazing. Those are so cool. They sound like, I mean, I can't wait.
They're
incredible.
They should be good. And Chenya is getting up at 4:00 in the morning to do it.
Oh my gosh.
For our 2 in the afternoon, stint.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, you sure? I'm asking you, but if you want to pre-record it, we can do that. So you don't. She goes, I'll show some tape, and I'll get up, but I'll get up for the questions and answers. And I was like, okay,
great,
wonderful.
Are there other things that you're excited about developing at the O'Neill? Other like ideas or other directions you want to bring to the O'Neill in the future?
Well, I do love the international feel. I do love bringing lots and lots of international ideas. I'd love to have the Foreman brothers come and do a show. I don't know if you guys know about them, but they're amazing. They're Czech. They're Milos Forman's sons, actually, the director. And they do these huge shows, huge, full circus tent size shows. And they set them up and they're just phenomenal. So I want to hope to bring some bigger shows in from Europe for us to see. I mean, it's complicated because then you can't just bring them to do us. We have to sort of help them figure out how to do other things.
Sure.
But I do like going more international. And sort of the big dreams got put on hold, just trying to figure out how to make everything happen during COVID. Mm-hmm. So I'll start thinking about that once I get through this conference. Once I get all the ducks in a row. And amazingly, I just wanted to add the pivot to online was really Jean Marie's pushing. She just said, no, this is it. We're done. We're going to do this way. Because I kept saying, well, let's wait because, maybe we'll do it. And no, she said, no, let's just figure out how we're going to do it online. And that's where the pivot happened. Because
she's definitely an act now kind of a lady rather than
yeah.
Yeah,
it did help. And also everybody had already applied. You see, we already had everyone, the applications closed the end of January, early part of February.
Right.
So everyone's applications had been approved and gone through and then we shut down. Everything shut down. So we had to figure out how to make those classes happen for people who'd already applied, right?
Mhm.
This year was different because we knew what we were doing and the applications were easier in that way.
Mhm.
You knew exactly what you were going to get. You're going to get the 5 days,
Mhm.
so that
Yeah.
pivot. And the good thing was we were able to, I mean, the miracle of Zoom will never stop to ceasing to amaze me. It just, we actually do have a feeling of community. We do get together.
Yeah.
We managed to create these events where everybody is involved, just like we do at the O'Neill, where you come at, your master class, all of us sit together in the theater together and hear the master class. It kind of was the same thing on Zoom. We had these moments that we all just connected so close together. And in some ways it's better because you see everybody much more intently, right? Sometimes when I'm at the O'Neill and I'm running around putting out fires, I may not see I'll see every person. I know everybody's name by the time they leave the campus, but I may not have seen every part of their marionette that they were building, or I may not have seen what they were working on in terms of the actual class hours, because I just didn't have time to make that class.
Right.
This way I get to pop into all these classes and see what people are doing, and it's just fascinating. And the fact that we built great marionettes on Zoom was like, what?
It's
I mean,
really cool.
how do you even teach someone how to balance a marionette on Zoom? Somehow.
It's a real testament to the people that you have running those programs.
Yeah, they've all worked really hard.
They're just incredible teachers in addition to being really great puppeteers.
Yeah.
They just really get it. And I think that's really, really special.
And the other way that we combine the community is Judy Rose always had tea time every day with Jim Rose. And since we lost Jim, we're going to have tea time with just Judy, and she's going to run it for us this time. And that tea time is just us getting together and talking about everything and nothing, and mostly nothing to do with puppets, just talking about life and philosophy. So, so I'm very happy that's all happening.
Mm-hmm. We asked this question to Jean Marie, and I'm curious what your answer is too. What do you think is one thing that people get wrong about the O'Neill, or what it's for?
I think they get wrong that it's a club. I think they get wrong that it's a closed system and you have to already be in the club to get in the club. It's not true. It is all about how you fill out your application. And if people, the same people go every year. Not true. Maybe 1/3 are returns. Most 2/3 of it is always new people stretching and learning. And I think that once you apply and we talk to you and we'll explain to you if you're not happy, if you don't get in for various reasons, we'll try and help you get in the next year. Sometimes it's not our call. The artist picks you, picks their own group of performers and participants they want to work with. And so that's beyond my control. But I think that's what people say, it's just a totally closed club. And that's not at all what it is. We are we want to be as diverse and as open to everybody as we possibly can. Because that's the art. Yeah,
and I just remember that's similar to what Jean Marie said as well. And I just remember my experience at the O'Neill. I think I went there when I was 19, my first year.
Yeah.
And you can't get much more of an outsider than that. And it was really the first time that I had been surrounded by a full group of people that were all puppeteers and we all shared a similar interest. That's the common thread. Kind of doesn't matter, what your experience level is in the community. And I feel like you really make a push for that, in that the experience is about trying new things. So if you go, you're not going to go there if you're going to do the same thing that you've always done over and over, or if you just want another place to do what you've always done. It's really a place to try new stuff and push yourself. And
right. And sometimes we don't accept people because they come back and they just want to do the marionettes again, and they want to do marionettes again, and it's like, okay, you did it 3 times in a row, done. You got to do something else.
Right. And I think I really love that encouragement that it is about, lifelong learning, and it's about trying new things and really pushing yourself as an artist, because it makes the community better, it makes the artists better, it makes so I really think that's
and that is, for me, the ultimate thing about the O'Neill is that we're trying to raise the standard of the art form. We're trying to get interesting, different, and better puppeteers out there. That's my ultimate goal. And so that is really important to me, you know.
Yeah.
That happens.
Here's a question. Do you still get a chance to make like original work or original, do you still make puppet shows?
Not much. Mostly I do directing, and I do the directing I do with the large walk around characters for Sesame Street. I have a lot of input on the scripts. I'm from Ground Zero. I work with them in the choreography, so that is where I kind of create stuff outside. But no, it's everyone says, well, why don't you take some time at the O'Neill and do it? And I'm like, hey,
time?
Do you understand what I do at the O'Neill? You know? So not much, but interestingly enough, I was just in Hawaii working with the Honolulu Theater for Youth. I was helping them hone some of their puppet skills because they are kind of branching into television puppetry and kind of had no clue. They just jumped in and did some really good stuff. So I was helping them work on some detail work, and they were very generous in saying, do you want to come and put a show? We'll do anything you want. We love you. And I went, oh, okay, let me think about that. You know,
Cool.
it's a wonderful offer. It's an amazing offer. So I'm kind of noodling about that perhaps that will be the next place I go. Probably not till 2022, sometime in the fall, maybe. And we'll see, you know, I don't know. When you get into administration, which you might know some of because you've been doing Puppet Kitchen for a while, you do sort of stop having the time to do that creative stuff and think creatively and figure out what you want to do.
Well, yeah, it definitely changes. And I'm curious, like you say, well, I'm not creating puppet shows, but I am directing. Like, I feel like you have to have some kind of creative outlet to balance out the administrative.
Absolutely. Well, and I get that because I'm a puppeteer as well, right? So my regular job is pretty creative and fun too. So sometimes that allows me the freedom to just concentrate on administrative because that side is being fed a little bit. Do you have any like active consideration to how much you're sort of feeding your creative side versus how much your administrative side is getting fed? No, that's probably the weak link in my personality is I just have to do what's in front of me and keep going forward. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I kind of should probably take a step back here. And, you know, but that's what COVID did for us, right? All of a sudden we were forced to take step backs and figure out what's going on. I had a kind of crazy COVID year anyway. So in terms of, I moved and was taking care of a lot of people, but that was sort of the nice thing was sitting there in COVID times going, I don't want to just sit here and watch TV all day. What are some things that I want to do, you know? So I took up knitting.
I mean, I think that's actually really great. Like it doesn't, like you were saying, with your like that very first costume job that you got, like those creative activities are linked to your puppetry practice. You know, they don't have to be making puppets. It can be just making.
Yes.
Which I think is really great.
Yeah, it's really fun. It is a very interesting career, I have to say, for all of us. You know, it's like obviously the best thing in the world to me to do. I would not want to do anything else. I mean, yes, being a singer, being an actor, being a dancer, those are all wonderful, but they're not the same as puppetry to me. You know, I even tried stand-up comedy for a while and was like, yeah,
that's great.
It's an interesting thing, stand-up.
Yeah,
not my thing.
I think it's so, I mean, I just think it's so important to like really just experiment a lot and just try out all of those things. Just even if you end up deciding that you don't want to do stuff, like, you know, that's all really valuable. But you know, of course we're biased. Puppetry is the best way to spend our time.
Well,
but
you know,
right, it is like our job is to play all the time.
Right. And laugh.
Figure out how to play really well.
Right. Or cry. I mean, it's about being playful and accessing deeper emotions. To me, that's what happens in puppetry, whether it's laughter or sadness or reaching someplace different. And storytelling. We're all storytellers. I mean, I think that's the human need is to tell your story and figure out what that is. Yeah. And we do it in a way that is probably the least intimidating, right? Way of telling stories.
Yeah, it's very
to the public. Yeah. Yeah. And that's super important.
Well, I have really enjoyed you talking about your story, Pam. I think that feels
Thank
like
you.
a really great spot to say goodbye. But I feel so happy that you joined us today, and
Thank you for
you know,
having
you're just
me.
a delight to talk to. I'm really happy that you are the one at the helm at the O'Neill, because it has
Thank you very much.
really gone leaps and bounds, even from the life-changing experience that I had when I was there. Like, it has become such a great institution for puppetry in general. So I'm really
Thank you.
thankful for the work that you do.
Thank you.
So, and I'm really thankful that you came and sat down and talked with us today. So
Wonderful. Thank you so much to all of you, whoever's listening, all
all of you.
of the huge masses.
Well, we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Okay. Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks,
See you
Pam.
guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Huge thanks again to Pam Arciero for being our guest today. If you want to learn more about the O'Neill, you should definitely check it out. Like Pam said, the master classes are still available they still have tickets available for the master classes. They are incredible. You will not be disappointed to hear the experiences of these people. I mean, it's a little bit like what we're doing on the show, but it's amazing. I highly encourage it. Also, if you want to help support this show, you can support us on Patreon and subscribe to the show so we can get more great guests like Pam. Of course, like and subscribe this video on YouTube, and we'll continue to bring more great guests to Puppet Time Online. I think that's it.
That's it, man.
Oh my gosh.
You did it.
Another great show. Next week, we are going to be talking with Martin Robinson, who, of course, is the original designer for Little Shop of Horrors. Among many, many other things, he's just one of my favorite people. So be sure to tune in next week. We're here Wednesdays live at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's right in the middle of the week. And so until then, just remember, you don't have to do everything to do something. See you next time.